Hey everyone, so this is day 3 podcasting webinar. So on day 1 we went through the plan section where we looked at ways to narrow down your ideas, score your podcast ideas, and then we looked at the 4 W's: who, why, where and what. I'm pretty sure I did those in a different order, but the second day, yesterday's webinar, we talked about building your podcast. So we went through a full beginner's kit bag for you and some more advanced stuff as well. We looked at some of the services you will need to get started. Plus, I gave you a great discount for hosting. So check out that video if you haven't. And today's webinar is all about grow. And we're going to kick it off with how to get listeners straight away. So let's smash straight into that. There are long lists of ways to promote your podcast, and most of them you'll already be doing if you release any other types of content. In this webinar, I wanted to bring you a surefire way to get listeners from day 1, your release day. So this is my perfect launch strategy. So number 1, make sure the podcast is everywhere it can be. Now, I've spoken about the importance ones before this, but make sure it's everywhere. Podcasting can have a real discoverability issue. It's been growing massively over the last couple of years, but it's still got that discoverability issue. You can't just flick on the radio like you can in a car. And so the last thing you want is for you to tell someone about the podcast and it not be on the thing that they use, the app that they use, the website they use. So imagine this. You've built this podcast, you really love it. You want to tell your friend about it and you know they'll love it too. And you go to that friend and you say, "Oh, I've made this podcast. Do you want to listen to it? I think you'll really enjoy it." And they go, yeah. Is it on Spotify? Oh, well, actually, it's not on Spotify yet. But if you download this app here, and then you type this in the search bar at the top, and then you click on that, and then you hit the subscribe button, and then you'll be able to listen to it. That friend's going to go, yeah, I'll do that when I get home. And then they're never going to do it. Let's be honest, they're never going to do it. Even if they love you, they're just not going to download a whole new app and go through all those stages. So you've got to make it as easy as possible. So be everywhere. That is pre-day 1. Make sure it's everywhere before day 1 launches. And there are a lot of weird and wonderful places out there. It only takes like the setup once. So even if you have to take a couple of hours out, go through a blog that lists them all, and there will be one on PodTips Pro. Go through a list and just make sure you're on every single one. It's only going to, even if that place only gets you a couple of listeners extra every month, it's a couple of listeners extra. Number 2 on my launch strategy, your first action promoting your podcast will be to use what you already have. So use any existing fans you might have, email lists you might have, but especially your social media followers. That's something that you and I, and we've all got. And the best thing to do is to reach out to them, ask them to listen, ask them to share it. If they're really good friends, ask them to share it around, and ask them to leave an all-important review in a podcast app too, like Apple Podcasts or iTunes or Stitcher. That really does help. And this initial influx of people, whilst they might not be the people you're aiming at or long-term fans of the show, this initial influx of people will be a huge benefit to getting on the front pages of those podcast apps. That's what they're looking for, is consistent episodes and an influx of people at the beginning to show its popularity. iTunes does have this horrible little popularity bar, and the algorithm for that is very, very complex, but having loads of people come in to listen really does help that, and that could help it get onto the front page of those apps, and that'll bring in a lot of organic growth. Also, a nice little tip is if people do send you a message, whether that's on social media or on an email, that they really like it, then ask them if they wouldn't mind copying and pasting that message into iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or whatever they use as a review. It's a really nice thing to show other people that people are loving your show, and it really does make a difference to those algorithms as well. So number 3, you need to be smart with all of these suggestions, though, especially social media. It's an absolute minefield, and you can post something and it just gets one person seeing it, especially if you've got a podcast page. Pages are very difficult to work with as well. So one of my favorite ways to make sure that social media works is, and it feels kind of odd to say this because we are promoting audio, but it's to use video. Social media loves video, and later in this webinar I'll show you how to make these amazing free videos using an awesome tool called Headliner by Spearman. They're completely free and they help promote massively. So that's my tip: use video, and stay tuned and we'll show you how to make those. Number 4, if you have guests on the podcast at any point, you can double the efforts that I've just spoken about by asking them once, don't nag them, but ask them to share to their own followings. Big guests might not always do this. I mean, they're on a lot of podcasts, but it doesn't harm asking once in a nice way. And I cannot recommend enough making this easy for them. Write example tweets they could click to share. Send the audiogram video that we just spoke about so they can easily use that. And you can even write some copy to go alongside of this so they don't have to. Some clients I work with, Andrew and Pete, did this excellently by creating a piece of artwork for each guest on their podcast. And it said something like, I survived the A&P podcast across it. It looked really cool and flashy. It had each guest's face on it. And so when they sent this to the guests, they really did share it. It was like having one of those t-shirts from a theme park. I survived Detonator. And people did share it, and it was a really good way of doing it. Number 5, another and by far my most successful way of promoting podcasts, especially with sort of niche topics or special subject areas, is to be super active in groups associated with that topic. If you have a Facebook marketing podcast, for example, be active in Facebook groups, go on Twitter chats, go on Reddit feeds about that topic, but have conversations. Don't just post links, but have conversations, build up relationships, and then where it's relevant, say, I covered this in my podcast episode. Do you want to check it out? This is a longer term plan, but start doing it from day one. In fact, start doing it from the minute you decide what your show is going to be about. And finally, number 6, as much as some people don't like it, Apple is still the biggest listening platform by a long way. So my final top tip for a top launch is to make sure you are completely fine-tuned for Apple. So use all of the Apple optimization boxes on Libsyn or wherever you host your podcast. And there's a separate section on Libsyn. I think there is on Blueberry and all the others. So make sure your show titles and show notes have lots of searchable terms in them. And make sure you have numbered your episodes properly in the right boxes. iTunes is now broken down into season numbers and episode numbers. Make sure things display right on iTunes and Apple Podcasts before you do your big launch. When you get your mini episode out and you get it into there, check it's displaying right. It's really important that that looks the best it can. Plus, Apple has given us the ability to have a podcast trailer, so use them. I cannot recommend having one of these enough. I really can't. It allows you to get your feed up and running before episode 1 is released. It gives a flavour of the show, and it can really show off some best bits once you've launched. Pick out those best bits, put it into a trailer, re-upload that as a trailer. It teases people into listening. You can label that episode in your hosting company as a trailer in the back end, and so then people that click on your podcast in iTunes or Apple Podcasts for the first time, if they haven't subscribed, they haven't listened before, that trailer will display at the top and it will really grab them in. And if trailers are good enough for movies, then surely they're good enough for podcasts, right? I mean, they've been working for years for movies, so you should have one for your podcast. Okay, so we've run through, there's my 6, there's probably a few more than 6 in there actually, so they're my 6 plus tips for your podcast launch. I know for a fact that doing a combination of those things will get you listeners from day one, so they're really, really important. There are a whole list more things you can do to promote. We do have an amazing checklist that will be on PodTips Pro when it launches in July as well. But if you just start with those things and start doing them as soon as you've got your idea, start creating that voice before you even release your first episode, and you will definitely get a whole bunch of listeners on day one. But there are a couple more things I do recommend you optimize, which moves us seamlessly, or not seamlessly, since I messed up my words, but seamlessly into our next section of this webinar, and it's about show notes. I mentioned a little bit before, but I could just list off more things to include in them, but rather than do that, I wanted to show you some great examples of show notes. So here's one of my favorite marketing and PR podcasts, and the show notes are top notch. So just clicking over here now, this is Janet Murray, who is a PR marketing expert, and her show notes are fantastic. Her website's great anyway, but you can see here, the most important thing at the top is to be able to play with one click. If they go into the show notes and it stops them playing, or if they go into the show notes and they have to click 3 times to get to an iTunes link or something, that's going to make them struggle. Then it's really easy to share really easy to share, some nice artwork that captures your attention straight away as well. And these are super important, the subscribe links. So if they've just got to this because they were looking for, in this case, how to get engagement on Instagram, but they think, that podcast's awesome, I'd love to have that on my phone all the time, I'd love to get every episode, you need those subscribe links right at the top. Okay? Then there's a brilliant breakdown, nice introduction. I mean, in this one, it's a little bit short. It's normally a little bit longer, but then you'll get in this what you'll learn in this episode. But that's really important to Janet because her podcast is about learning. And what I really like about this is that she's even time tagged it. So why Instagram is a visual platform and how you can, that's at 3:13. And then as you go through, you can then pick out. So say you've listened to it once and you're in the car, but then when you get back to the office or get back to home, you want to know how to make use of hashtags, pods and stories, then you've got it there, 1930. Right, I can skip forward to that point. Then she's got lots of links to things she talked about, really clear, no messing about. They're just, here's what it is, you click it and you get the link. And that's really nice because you're including other people as well. There's the chance that then they'll share it and you'll get backlinks to those show notes. Really important to do. And then she references other episodes she's talked about. So if you really enjoyed this one, you've also got these to go and check out, which is really, really clever because it just keeps people listening, keeps them bouncing around episodes. She's got a bit about why she's doing this and her giveaways. So if you are doing it for a reason, if this is a lead generation tool or something like that, that's in there. The connect on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Again, that shareability. And then this is one of my favorite sections about Janet Murray's show notes, and that is the what to do next. It's telling you what to do. It's like, oh, I really enjoyed that. Oh, it's ended. What do I do? Oh, well, you can share it. You can review it. You can subscribe on iTunes. It's telling you what to do next in a nice way. And so you don't feel like, oh, when this has ended, that was the end of my interaction with Janet or my interaction with this podcast. Now, another thing I haven't spoken about, I've just spoken about the layout and what's in there, but what's really important about this is the amount of terms that are relevant to what Janet's talking about. She's made the title really relevant. Engagement on Instagram. That's what people are going to be searching. That'll be in her subtitle too. Then it says it a couple of times throughout this text. It says it several times in what you'll learn in this episode. And then the links are about that, and there's relevant links to that. So making sure that the search terms that people would search in the show are in the show notes is really important. Another example comes from the brilliant podcast Radio Lab. It's a massive, massive podcast. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, these are a bit more simple. The artwork is big normally on this. So the artwork is meant to capture your attention. Titles there nice and simple. And again, one click to listen. They've also got the ability for you to embed it. So if you want to write a blog about it or whatever, then there's the ability to just click that and plug it in, which is amazing for your podcast if someone does that. The share buttons are there again as well, nice and clear. And this is a bit more texty, but again, it has all those search terms it should. It gives you an insight into the story, tells you a bit about it. It's almost like a trailer to the episode, what's in this area here. Again, backlinks to things, making it really clear. And what I like about this, I know they've got a URL, a website address typed out here, but a lot of them, and it was the same in Janet's, are actually links. So it says go check them out, and then it's a link rather than having www.this and this. Another great thing in this is almost to treat the end of it like credits. People want to know who's in it. And then by mentioning those people, like Molly Webster here or all of these doctors that have been in the episode, they might then share it as well. So you're just giving a little nod to them saying, thanks very much, and this is what it is. And another thing as well, if you're doing quite a technical podcast, the geeks like to know what you used. So pop that in there as well. Put support for any music that you've used. And again, here they've got a nice little call to action. That's what they want you to do. Radio Today are supported by donations, so they've put that in. But again, it's not silly, it's just there. Something I also really love about this is they've got an extra. So again, they haven't just left you at the end of the episode. They've gone, here you go, you can do this. And here's an audio extra. So they've put a little bit of audio extra in, which is really lovely. You could do this with any type of podcast, even a podcast that you're trying to make people laugh with. Maybe you have an audio extra in the show notes that is the outtakes as you messing up all the time and you're laughing with your co-host or whatever. And you can mention that at the end of the podcast, say it's in the show notes, and that'll drive people to your website to then check out more episodes. So it's really important. It's a really nice touch by Radiolab. And those two examples are fantastic examples. You can start small and build up from that, but show notes are essentially your SEO for your podcast. And for those of you that don't have no idea what SEO stands for, it does stand for search engine optimization. In website terms, it's optimizing your website so it can easily be found on Google. And so titles, descriptions, and show notes are exactly that, but for iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify. So if your podcast is about, I don't know, cheese, make sure you're mentioning all the keywords about cheese that people might search for in your show notes. And that will mean it will show up when people search for those terms in Apple Podcasts or iTunes or wherever. So I don't know, like Edam audio. I don't know, no one's probably ever searched for that in their lives, have they? But making sure the search terms that people would use to find your podcast are in your show notes, are in your titles, and are in your descriptions is super, super important. Okay, so next is a slightly controversial topic, and that's podcast websites. Now, when I say controversial, I don't mean there's huge heated debates, but a lot of people are asking, do I actually need one? Some people say you do, some people say you don't. Well, I've enlisted a bit of help from my friend Mark Asquith on this one, and this is why he thinks you should have a podcast website.
It's a good question about a website, whether you need one or not to podcast. And the short answer is no, you don't need one. You don't need a website to podcast. But ultimately, you probably should have one. And the reason is that your podcast is one feeder into your platform. It's one feeder into your complete hub of content online. You might start as a podcaster today, but you might want to blog. You may add video to your mix. You may be doing this for business. And if you are doing it for business, then you need a website anyway. Everyone has a website. So your podcast becomes more than just a podcast. It becomes a brand on its own. It becomes a standalone product in a lot of cases. Think about Law, the podcast Law. It's a storytelling podcast. Does that need its own website? No. But do people want to visit a website to feel the trust and the reliability and the fact that this is a tangible thing that I can actually view? It's a proper media outlet. I believe truly that podcasting, yes, anyone can do it. But if you think about it, it's always been in the shadows. And for it to step into the mainstream, it needs to be trusted by people who don't trust things like podcasting. And the website is the first point of trust that so many people, including my mum, my dad, your mum, your dad, if it's not got a website, it must not be legit. So not saying that you need one from day one, but what I am saying is that you're going to need one sooner rather than later, and it better match your brand and it better match your personality.
Also, I asked Mark what makes a great podcast website, and he's the expert.
What makes a good podcast website? Do you know what? It needs to be simple. And look, this thing is going to grow, and it's going to become the next EO Fire. It's going to become the next Andrew and Pete, the next Excellence Expected. These sites are huge sites, but they didn't start like that. All they started with was really good content, with a homepage that tells people what this is about. What can you expect? What are the promises that I'm making and that I'm going to deliver on? I'm going to give you this content at this time on this day, and it's going to be this long, and this is the type of thing you're going to get. You need a way to get in touch with someone, and of course you need your podcast audio files on there. You need a list and a way to listen. That is all it needs to be, but here's the kicker. If you've got your own website and a sponsor knocks on your door and says, have you got a sponsor pack or a press kit available? How much easier is it to add one page on an existing website than it is to scramble around and try and build a 10-pager ready for that sponsor? So it's all about prep as well. But all you need to start with is a really good storytelling-based homepage and a way to get in touch and a way to consume your episodes. That is it.
Thanks, Mark. And so, as with the show notes, let's show you a couple of websites that do exactly what Mark just said really, really well. Here's some of my favorites. One of my favorite podcasts of all time is Reply All by the US podcasting giants Gimlet Media. And whilst this is a subsection of their overall Gimlet website, but it still works in exactly the same way, and I'm sure they've got a URL that takes you straight to it. So this is the website for Reply All, and it's really simple but really eye-catching. So really bright colours across the top that match the branding of the artwork, really important. They've got a quote at the top that is relevant to the episode they've just published that just captures you straight away. And it says when they publish, and it has the ability to listen. Now, the only thing I don't like is it says listen on Apple Podcasts. It hasn't got the other options. That's probably a corporate deal for them or something, but it should have all the options to listen, so that people can, like I said before, get it where they normally get their podcasts or their music or whatever. Then recent episodes across the middle, really easy. Listen now, so you've got one click to listen, and then you've got a click into the show notes as well, which is great, and the option to see all the episodes if you're going back and looking. Then you've got a bit about them, so really simple here, a bit about Reply All. It's got some quotes from other people about it, some nice reviews or testimonials, which is lovely, and it's got its Twitter and Facebook and social media links. Here we go. So it has got a how to listen section further down, which is really nice. So it's got pretty much every option you can think of. And if you aren't on any of these, this is where you should be. Where to get started. So if it suggests if you're a new listener, if it's your first time to the show, these are some really great episodes to get you hooked, which is really nice. I haven't seen many websites do that. And a bit about the team, because they want you to get to know them, get to know who's on the actual podcast. What I like here as well is that they've put one of the producers as the first people on here, rather than the two guys who you do know who are the hosts. They're actually second and third, so that's quite a nice touch as well. But it's really, really simple. It shows you where to go, where to listen, and how to subscribe. And they're the main things that you want people to do by going to the website. So they're the main things that should be on there. Here's another podcast I really like, and it's from Ross and David Festuca. They do the Passion Never Fails podcast, and this is ultimately so simple. It has everything you need, but very simply. So it has a left bar that stays the same. The right bar scrolls on the left. Big, nice logo, nice colours laid out. It's kind of a business podcast, or it is a small business, a medium-sized and large business podcast. So it has those blue tones, which work really well. They want you to sign up to their email list. That's why they do the podcast. So there it is there. Has the subscribe options. Bang, brilliant. And it has a bit about the host, which you can find out more if you go into the menu. But they've kept it really simple. Subscribe, know who we are, and listen. Now, this has brilliant show notes in it. And I will go into these actually in just that. But you can see every episode here, and it's laid out nicely. You know what it's about, you know who it is, you know what episode number it is if that's important, and then bang, you're in. Now this is 2 clicks to listen, which is fine. Any more than 2 I think is a problem. Players in there, show notes are laid out nicely like we talked about earlier. But something I really like here is that then they've got quotes from the podcast. So if you really like something in the podcast, you could got those quotes at the bottom, which you with one click can share on Twitter. That's a really nice touch. So really simple podcast website, and they're the ones, like Mark spoke about, they're the ones that are the best. They should just have those key things in them. And as Mark said earlier, a podcast website does add a level of trust. And if you want to check out Mark, and he built a company with podcaster John Lee Dumas, a massive podcaster. So he set that up to help you build and host podcast websites, and you can. So go and check that out. It's at the very conveniently named podcastwebsites.com, which is a great name, and that's what the company is called as well. Okay, so we've looked at the perfect podcast launch plan to get listeners from day one. We've looked at great show notes and some examples of those, and we've looked at some of the best websites out there, the ones that I really like too. But I promised to show you how to use video to boost your social media promotion, didn't I? Okay, so let's start with why you want to use video on social media. Social media platforms like Facebook, as an example, love video. But why? Why do they love video? Well, they worked hard to get you onto that platform. They spent a lot of money to get you onto whatever platform, and they want you to stay there. And so they promote things that get people to stay on that platform. They like conversations, engagement, long-form text. They like video because it keeps you there. What they don't like is if you just go, check out my new podcast, here's the link, because that link will take you away from Facebook. It doesn't keep you there for very long. And so their algorithm goes, yeah, let's put that to the bottom. And 5 people can see that, not 100 people. Whereas video opens in their platform, so you need to have the video, say Facebook, for example, have it in Facebook. Because if you have it on YouTube, again, that takes you away from Facebook. But it keeps it there. In the feed on Facebook, it's in the feed, so you watch that. If that's a 10-minute video, well, you've got Facebook 10 minutes extra more face time. So they're going to love that, and up the algorithm it goes. So it's really, really important. That's kind of why, if you think about that with everything that you post, then you're going to be able to keep those algorithms fresh, keep insights coming in, and then the amount of clicks and listens you then get is really important. Another top tip as well, if you do want to have that link there, so even if you use a video, say to get more of this, to hear the whole thing, the link is in the first comment of this post. That doesn't affect the algorithm. Facebook, it's a bit underhanded. Facebook, Twitter, those sorts of things don't pick that up as the main one, so they don't push it down the algorithm, but it is still there for people to go and check out. So the great thing is you don't need to hire a video editor, you don't need to go on Upwork or Fiverr, you don't need to learn how to use Premiere Pro or even iMovie, as you can make these awesome little audiograms. You know, the little videos I had for Mark Asquith speaking earlier? You can generate those for free online with a tool from spareman.com. It's called Headliner. I mentioned it earlier. So I'm going to just quickly take you through that process now. So it's headliner.spareman.com. Oh, it's actually changed now. So it's just changed to make.headliner.app, which is really nice. And you need to log in or create an account. It's completely free to create an account. Okay, so when you've got an account and you've logged in, you'll be met with this screen. So you've got sort of the audiogram wizard, you've got an automated wizard, which can create different variations of things. And you can, if you're very brave, you can start with a blank project and have a play with all of those. The one I'm going to show you today is the audiogram wizard. Now here you're met with kind of what it will look like. There we go, really simple. And all you have to do is have a piece of audio. So this is the important bit. Pick out, and this can be done whilst you're editing, whilst you're listening back to something, hit markers, write down the times, and just pick out a bit of the podcast, the little clip that's going to really make people listen. You'll hear this a lot. So if it's an interview podcast, you'll hear that little clip of a story that's like the build up and then it stops. That's the trailer, that's the clip, that's the bit that you want to pull out and put into these audiograms. The bit that goes, oh man, I need to hear that now. That might be a really good gag, it might be a massive punchline, it might be a fact that makes people go, what? Like, you get so much more engagement by using audiogram videos, find out how. Boom. Now, grab that audio file and you drop it into Spareman here. And you just upload it really simply. Upload that file. It's going to ask you if you want to do audio transcription, and it has that option, so it'll automatically transcribe. You can pick out the language that it's going to do it in. English, you can pick out English United Kingdom, English Nigeria, English New Zealand. So it's got all of those options. So I am from the United Kingdom, I don't know if you noticed. And then you hit next. Now you can edit that a little bit of clip if you like, if you want to take the end off or whatever, so it doesn't have to be specific. Now I'm thinking audio, I think that about 30 to 40 seconds works the best. That's my personal experience. If you want it a bit longer, that's fine. Just remember that if you're sharing on something like Instagram, that has to be under a minute. So you can edit that here and then you go next. And this is the great bit as well. So you can select what shape or aspect ratio, as they call it here, for the social media platform you're going to share. So you've got portrait for Instagram stories and Snapchat. You've got square for Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook for squares. You've got landscape for Facebook and YouTube and websites. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick landscape for now. Then you can add a background image, which is really, really cool. You add your background image in. You can select what kind of wave types. You've got bars, you've got equalizer, you've got pixelated. It can all look really cool. You can move that around. You can customize the waves position. And you can change the color as well. So you can change the wave color so it sits nicely on your background image. So, and you can make those images easily in something like canva.com. Add your logo, add a picture of the guest or whatever. Just make that image really nice and drop it in the background. And then you hit the create project button. And it will say hang tight, and it will just upload that audio for you. It might take a little bit of time to do that, but you will then eventually get to the next screen. On the next screen, you get your video editor. So this will have created some transcriptions for you, which you can edit as well. You can edit all along the sort of timeline here, but when you are ready, have a play with this. But when you're ready, if you want the transcription and the captions on, you can turn them off as well if you don't want them. And then you just hit the export button on the right hand side. Now it'll ask you an email address that you want it sent to, so they send you an email address. You can change the frame rate if you like. You can choose the quality and the video size. You can 1080, 720 or 480, different levels of HD. You can even add intro and outro clips if you want. When you're ready, when you've played around with these and you're ready, you hit export and it starts to generate that video. Now, you will receive an email when it's done, so don't close this. You don't close this window, but you can go away from it and you'll receive an email when you have that little video. And that's it. It's that simple. And as you go through, you'll start to be able to do that process a lot quicker. You have templates in Canva and you'll just be smashing those videos out for every single one. So they're available by going to sparemin.com and checking out the headliner tool, and I would recommend using them. They are fantastic. There's a lot of other ones out there, but this one, in my opinion, is absolutely one of the best. They will increase your social media presence by a huge amount. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this podcasting webinar. I hope it has been helpful and that you have been able to get the information you need to the 3 sections: plan, build, and grow your podcast. I've had a great time sort of talking to you about it and answering your questions, and I really do hope it's been helpful. This information, do remember, this is just a tiny slice of the support and the courses you'll get from the PodTips Pro membership. And so just quickly, I will show you what is there again. So you will get, if you think you've learned a lot from this webinar, you will get so much more in the 5-part podcasting course, which will be released throughout July and August. They are going to be just one of the courses that is in there. So over the next year, over the next couple of months, there will be other courses in there too. But this is just, I can't stress enough, I can't tell you how much is going to be in this course. I'm just super excited to get it out to you. But like I've said, these webinars, which have been sort of from an hour to half an hour to an hour, are just a tiny slice of what you'll get in that course. So that's super exciting. You'll also get the Pod Power group. This is a mastermind group that will just keep growing and getting better and better. And you will get direct answers. So if you just want a quick question, bam, you'll get an answer from me every time in that group. And you will be in a community of like-minded individuals who are working hard on their podcast. So they'll be able to help you and we'll all learn together. Now, this is the continual support bit. I've spoken about PodTips Pro helping to support you all the time rather than being a one-off course purchase. Every single month, there will be open hours. You'll have access to those open hours, which will give you access to one-to-one time with myself and other experts. And that can be anything. We can do podcast snoops where we listen to a bit and suggest. We can do presenter techniques. We can do tech support, anything like that. I worked in commercial radio for a very long time, and this was a big important part of the 7 to 10 years I did in radio, and so I want to give that back within the Pro membership. There'll also be discount codes, so if you're just starting out, like the one I gave in yesterday's webinar, you'll get discounts that amount to at least 3 months of the PodTips Pro membership fee. So it's like having 3 months free. In fact, on the half price, that'll be even more months free. And then finally, you'll get access to the podcasting library archive. So there'll be easy access to everything I've ever written on podcasting, every resource you could help. So if you want a quick, easy way to fix a problem, you go on there. Oh, yep, there's something brilliant. It's fixed. And now, I've promised this the whole time. I'm going to stop you waiting. Here's the half price offer for you. So normally membership for PodTips Pro is £30 or $40 a month. And with that one-to-one time each month plus everything else, that's really, I can't get over how I'm really so happy to be able to offer it at such an affordable rate. Most podcasting courses are £500 or dollars plus, and that's just for a 1-day or 2-day course. A year at full price on my platform is just £360 or $480. So it's already less than the course, and that's for continuous support throughout the year, and it includes that course and many other courses. But you don't even have to pay that. You get that for half price for up to a year just for coming on these webinars. So if you want to take up this offer, you have 2 options. Option 1, if you want to pay monthly, you can do that by paying £15 or $20 per month, and that will be up to 6 months at that price. That's not the year, but it's 6 months, but you're just paying £15 or $20 per month. Option 2 is you can pay the annual fee at half price right now. So it's just £180 or just $240, and that's for the entire year PodTips Pro. So you're going to get all that stuff for just £180 or just $240. Tiny amount for all of that. So it's a fraction of the cost of a 1-day course, but you're going to get continuous support for the entire year. So option 1 for the 6 months at £15 or $20, or option 2 for the entire year at £180 or $240. If you want to get that offer, or just if you want to get some more information and see why I've created it, more of the things that are going to go in there, go over to podtips.pro/half price offer. You have to be signed up to this webinar to be able to get the offer, and we'll be cross-referencing those emails and those people names that sign up, and a payment would be needed for signing up today. Or when you go over to the page. So as long as you've signed up for this and you go over to that, when you sign up for one of those offers, we will require payment for that. The PodTips Pro membership launches at the beginning of July, and the 5-part course will be rolled out week by week after the first week of July. So to get that half price offer for up to a year, go to podtips.pro/half price offer, and the link to that is in the notes below. That's it. I'm not going to do any more, Sally. That's the end. And speaking of below, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please do drop a comment below this video, or you can just email me, chris@chrishuskins.com, or find me on any social medias. I'd love to chat to you. And if you're thinking about the PodTips Pro but you're just not sure, then let me know. I can jump on a call and I can just tell you the things that it will really help you with. Thanks again for watching these webinars. I really do hope they've been super useful. I'll see you in the membership site. See you later. Bye.